Welcome to my channel. My name is Mark Fisher. I'm an applications engineer with Printistat, and you're watching Uncle Fish's CAD tricks and tips. Today's topic, snappy comebacks. We all love snaps. We all love O-snaps. So we're going to learn a little bit more about them today. So first things first, what the heck is a snap? Well, a snap is a little magnet that allows line work or other objects to go to a specific point so that we have good drafting. For example, if I were to draw a line, kind of eyeball this in here, all right, well, all of a sudden I'm seeing that I get that little endpoint. Well, yeah, I want it to go exactly to that endpoint. The reason that it's doing that is that down here on my status bar, this little guy with the small box and a big box and a triangle next to it controls my running object snaps. So I'm going to turn a couple of these on and off just so we can see how they work. And it becomes very easy to do good drafting. So for example, if I want to draw a line from here and I want to go to the midpoint of this, all I have to do is bring my cursor close to the midpoint. I get the little triangle and ta-da, that's exactly the midpoint. If I want to come in and I want to be perpendicular, I can force it to be perpendicular by just hovering my cursor over, click, and now I have a perpendicular line. If I want to come in one more time from out here and come into the endpoint, I just have to be careful, because if I get too close to the perpendicular, my magnet will take me there. If I want to make sure that I'm coming down to the endpoint, I have to move my cursor closer to the end point of the line. So those are the easy ones. Let's look at a couple other ones here. Circles and arcs have their own set of object snaps. We'll turn these on or off down a little bit here. Turn these on or off just so we can see what's going on. Tangent. So now if I want to do a line and I want to come into the center of the circle, or let's go from the center of the circle, you can see that I now have a couple things happening on my screen. The first of which is this little white plus sign, and the second of which are these 4 quadrants. So I'm going to use the center and come out just for the sake of argument. And now I'm going to do a line that comes in to this quadrant. The quadrants, if you want to think of them as a compass, it's north, east, south, west points on the circle. And last but not least is a tangent. We all know what a tangent is, at least hopefully if we've had 8th grade geometry. I recently taught Amish guys, and I did notice that they did not know what a tangent was, so I had to teach them that real quick. But if I'm going to use the tangent, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to come pretty close to where my tangent line is going to happen. Now this again, I have to be a little careful, because if your cursor gets too close to the quadrant, that snap's going to take over. So I want to make sure I'm on the tangent snap, or if I were to do one up here, I can click on those. I'll talk about the delayed tangent in just a minute. That's a little bit further. There's also another snap that if you work with points, or if you're marking out, you're using an object to measure it out or mark it out or things like that, and you use a point, this is called the node snap. So if I want to do a line, I want to come into my node. That's just what I'm doing there. If I want to start at my node, I can do it the same way. Next two I want to talk about are the nearest and the intersection. I'll do the intersection first because that one's a little easier. So if I do a line from here and I want to come into my intersection, I forgot if I turned it on here. And now if I come down, yep, there it is. So I get a little yellow X that comes in. That's an intersection. I'm going to turn on the nearest just so you can see what happens here. I'm going to draw a line, and I'm going to come down here. The nearest is not one that I would recommend that you have as a running snap, because it will take over and basically make all of the other ones secondary. So I would only use this as a one-time option. I'm going to go back and turn that off so I don't have that happen again. But it is there. So another snap that's important to know is the insert snap. Down here on this menu, I'm going to go to the insertion point, And it works two ways this time. So you can see that my yellow text here, if I click on this and highlight it, I have a grip that's up here in the upper left corner, and I have these other couple of grips that show around. This insert snap is going to be based on what the justification of this block of text is. So if I want to come here and I want to go to the insert point, I can do it that way. This little guy down here, you can see that it's just kind of the graphic of a fire hydrant. This is called a block. I'll cover these in another lesson or another video. But if I want to do a line and I want to come down here to this insertion point, now it's going to give me all those different options, because it's not only looking at the hydrant, or not only looking at the block, it's also looking at all of the line work of the hydrant. Well, I just want to be sure that I force it to get the insertion point of that hydrant. So I'm going to just kind of move my cursor around. That's what I'm looking for. So that's an insertion point. I'll do another one over here. I'm going to change this guy. I'm going to bring up my properties. Now, if you take a look at this, so this one is justified top left. I'm going to change this one to be justified bottom right, just so you can see how the insert snap functions. So if I do a line and I want to come into that insertion point, I can make it work in there. Where does that come in handy? Well, if you have a bunch of pieces of text, like for example, if you have a note sheet or something like that in your plan set, and you want to line all these up, I can line them up by doing grip edits. I'm going to make sure my perpendicular snap is turned on here. It's that easy to line up big blocks of text. Text is another issue that we'll cover at another point in time. Another group of snaps I want to look at is a couple that you can't access until you learn the shift right click option. For example, the mid between 2 points is a great object snap, but you'll notice that you can't get to it on here. There's nothing that says mid between 2 points. So the way to get to that is to use the shift right click option, and you'll get a couple of different things that happen here. So let's say, for example, I want to find the distance or the midpoint between this end and this midpoint, and I want to start drawing something from there. I'm going to do a line, and I'm going to do shift right click. I'm going to go mid between 2 points. Endpoint, midpoint, ta-da. There we go. I got exactly the midpoint of what I want. I'll do it again. Well, this time we'll do a circle. And let's say this time I want to do the mid between 2 points of this endpoint, and let's say this perpendicular. Gives it to me that way. Do it one more time. I'll do a circle, mid between 2 points. Let's go between this endpoint and that midpoint, and you can see that my circle lands exactly in between there. There you go. That's the shift right click. Another option, or another snap that comes to life here, or as an option, is the from snap. So if I wanted to draw, for example, I want to do a line, and I know I don't want to go right here at the end, but I know I only want to be a specific distance apart. Let's say I want to be 2 units away from there. Now I can automatically pick that. I can start drawing my line. It comes in very, very handy for a couple of different options there. So let's see. What else do I want to look at here? Here's another one. Okay, I'll show you how this works. You can see the line already in place. I want to show you how to use the tangent snaps as a delayed option. There's a couple other snaps that function like this. The tangent one is probably the most significant. So I want to draw a line, and I want to go from the tangent of this circle to the tangent of this circle. Well, let's pick on this one, and what you'll see is as little tiny 3 periods of ellipsis there that let me choose that tangent. So once I click, AutoCAD knows that I want that circle, or I want the tangent of that circle, but it needs to figure out, or it needs me to tell it, that I want to use something else as the point. So, for example, in this case, I'm going to use the deferred tangent for that second circle. Works in other ways too. If I want to go, for example, I want to do shift right click, I want to go from this center, and I want to go to the tangent out here, it lets me pick that. If I want to reverse that, and I want to go from the tangent of the circle down here, and I want to go up to the quadrant of this circle, I can do it that way. And so I can use a couple different versions of snaps. All right, this one takes a little bit more understanding here. So it looks like these two lines are crossing one another. However, if we look a little bit closer, what you'll see is that this line has an x, y, and z value, particularly the z is 0 of the start and the end. That means it's down in what I'll jokingly call flatland, okay? However, this line, I'll make this one yellow just so we can see a different color. If I click on this one is a little bit different. Now I know that I have the end z of is at 0, but the start z is at 1. That means that one end or the other is starting a little bit higher and coming down in the third dimension. So let me see if I can grab that and if I can do an orbit here. Oops, wrong one. Grab that, view, orbit, strained orbit. Now you can see that if I start spinning that around, they're not in the same plane. But if I close out of my orbit here and I go back to my exit, and I go back to my top view, and I go back to my north view, now you get a good picture of the fact that they're on different planes. So now I'm going to see if I can get this to cooperate with me here. So now I'm going to cheat and use plan in the world coordinate system. Now I'm back to safety. Thank you very much. I'm going to use a snap called the apparent intersection. So if I want to draw a line to what looks like the intersection, see those three little dots, those are deferred. That means it's waiting for more information. So I want to defer the extended intersection between this line, and it'll figure it out. So that's the apparent intersection. So two important pieces to remember here. Shift right click will force a snap, and F3, if you take a look at my cursor down here, F3 will turn that on or off. One more object snap I want to show you here, and I'm just going to draw some random polyline. And we'll make this come in just for the sake of argument here. Now, if I want to draw a line, and I want to figure out what the center of that object is, or let's call it the geometric center, I have no idea without some help. Well, there's help in the form of shift right click, and it gives me the option. No, it doesn't. My apologies. There is no option on this one. But if I come down here and I look at geometric center, just make sure that gets reset there. If I do a line from the geometric center, you see that little glyph that pops up there? That is the geometric center of that object. If I grab this line, grip edit it out a little bit there, and I do a line, and see that it moves locations a little bit. Grab this one, pull it down here. We'll turn this one into an arc. Showing you some other little tricks here, tidbits. So this guy, I'll make this one green just so we know the difference. Now I want to draw, let's say, a circle that starts at the geometric center. Well, now that I made changes, that shows up inside my object. We'll kind of squish that around a little bit here. Grip edit this. You can see that my geometric center glyph kind of adjusts itself every time I make one of those motions. So now if I do a line from outside of here, now that shape has a geometric center of this. That's a pretty complex shape to figure out by hand. So I'm pretty glad that that geometric center exists. It can also work in a 3D world too. If I do Shift, right click, you can see that I have options for point filters if you have a whole bunch of survey points. And I also have three-dimensional object snaps. These are for 3D objects, and for example, these are kind of new. You can figure out what some of the snaps are in relation to a point cloud. Point cloud, for those of you who may not know, is a gigantic series of points that is usually flown by some kind of aircraft or drone to pull out survey information, for example, elevation and contours and that sort of thing. But you can actually use 3D object snaps to hit some of those points. So, lots to know, lots to learn. Hopefully this was a good little video that helps you understand the snaps a little bit more. And if you didn't know, maybe there's a couple little pieces in there that you know now. Shift right click for one, F3 for another, and all kinds of different options that you can get to. So I'm Uncle Fish. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.